knew him as back then. And let me tell you, that includes a couple of very young ladies that used to work in the accounting department at Harley Davidson that Jack might remember back then about. Anyway, what I'll refer to that period as, through Jim's word, as the me and Sid period. They were out there in his dad's old mid-60s Ford pickup, going to every short track and flat track in the entire region. And when I went to work for O'Brien there at Milwaukee, the first thing I did was buy a house with a pretty good sized shop out back, known by Dick O'Brien as Racing Headquarters, because that's where I stashed all the such. I swiped from the racing department and took home to work on Jim and Sid's bikes with. One of the most memorable things I remember about Jim at Santa Fe is that Jim had a pretty thick head and a quick temper, as you know. And when something goes wrong, he's there working furiously along on his sprint, trying to repair it in time for the main event. And some other racer comes up and says, Jim, here's what you got to do. You got to take the main jet out and drill out this passageway. He says, look, you son of a bitch, do you see those black and white number plates? Do you know how I got them? And the poor guy would quietly shrink away and go back to his own business and let Jim take care of his motorcycle. Actually, the very first event that Jim and I shared together was that somehow we stumbled onto a ride at the United States Grand Prix of Daytona, which was actually a misnomer because it was kind of an outlaw race that a few international riders came to. And somehow our sponsor got a deal with the Benelli Motor Company, which made a little bike called a Matobi. And there we were, showing up at Daytona with our dirt track lace-up boots and Jim's big baggy pants that he wore. You can imagine what an Italian factory tuner thought when he looked at these two hicks that showed up to ride his skinny little motorcycle. He was waving his arms around, jumping up and down and carrying on about the wind drag and our clumsy boots with his tiny little handmade foot pegs and things that are designed for things like we refer to as ballerina boots. So the first thing he did was take us out to the local bootery place and make us buy the skinniest little kind of wrestling boots that we could find, and get some duct tape and tape our loose floppy leathers up and all that. But somehow it worked out really well. We both did okay. I kind of like to brag that I won the first United States Grand Prix on a foreign motorcycle of a U.S. rider, because this skinny little Italian road racer could cut circles around some of the Honda factory guys because it was so nimble and it braked so well and that kind of thing. But Jimmy did just as well. He won the 175 class in the same overall race we did. And the Italian guy went home to Italy really happy that we represented his interests so well. But Jimmy had a huge heart, as we all know. Like I said, he was bullheaded and hot-tempered, but he had a heart of gold, and we all really cherished the time that we spent with him, both on the track and working on bikes and just in everyday life. And I'll regret to the day that I died that I didn't get to return the last call that he made to me about buying some of his stuff. I still have his voice on the answer machine of my phone at home that I'm going to leave there until the power fails or whatever causes it to go away. Goodbye, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jeff.
See if I can figure out how to make this thing work. Most everybody here knows me, but if you don't, my name is Sid. I traveled with Jimmy for probably 10 years, and I probably know more stories about him than anybody here. And he was really an inspiration to me, because if we were on the same racetrack together, there was no way I was going to let him beat me. He was really devoted to motorcycling, and he had this fixation. His favorite was the short tracks, on the 250s at Santa Fe, and Santa Fe was a kind of the Ascot of the Midwest, and he was so focused on trying to win a main event there, he couldn't really concentrate. And I think it was about 1967. We had gone the whole year, and he'd never won a main event. We went to the last race. It was a season championship, and he was really nervous about it. And just to make it shorten it up, it was one of those fluke deals that I ended up winning the race. And it was on his motorcycle, which even made it worse. And they gave me this really nice trophy. I never kept the trophies that I won, but this one I was thinking of keeping because it was a lamp and it had a fountain pen in it and everything. It was marble. It was real nice. I was thinking, well, I'll just keep this one because it was a Santa Fe Speedway Championship. And I was sitting there on the tailgate of the truck, and he come walking up, and his face was about as red as the sun, and I could tell things weren't right. And he went over and reached and grabbed that trophy, and he says, "Here's your effing trophy," and he drilled it into the dashboard. Would have made Brett Favre look bad. But I could tell it was going to be a long trip back to Milwaukee. But he was really devoted to motorcycle racing. You know, one year we were over in Indiana on a half mile, and he tipped over pretty hard, and it hurt him really, really bad. He couldn't move real good. He was real concerned about the Wednesday night race at Santa Fe because he was the point leader, and that was what kept him going, was being the leader. And he couldn't sit on his motorcycle. He couldn't ride. So I told him, I said, if you really want to do this, I said, let's get your leathers on. And I set him on the motorcycle, and I wrapped him up with duct tape. Taped him on the handlebars, all on his seat, on his legs, on his feet, on the pegs. And we just pushed him off. And he actually made the main event with it. And did pretty good. But we had to catch him when he came in the pits because he couldn't balance himself, you know. And it was interesting. He was a very, very devoted person to racing. A good guy, good family man. He did well. And I could keep going all day about this because if I keep digging, I'll remember stories. But there's probably other people who want to say something, so I'll let it go.
Thanks, Ed.